Okay, so tomorrow we're going to be working on linear equations in standard form. Today we talked a lot about slope-intercept form. We talked about how it's y equals mx plus b. If you have an equation in this form, it makes a linear function. So if you see this, you should be able to tell me this equation will draw a line. And then we also talked a bit about how your calculators like to, and I'm not really sure why they did this, but your calculators likes to say ax plus b. But it's in the same position as the m. Oops. So both these things here are the slope, okay, which is the rise over the run. And then both these b's is the y-intercept. You need to remember when you're plotting the y-intercept, x has to be 0. And then you should have some number here for the y-intercept. If you remember in class, we talked about the y-intercept is the point along the y-axis. So if I had this equation here, y equals negative 2x plus 3. You should know the 3 is in the b position, which means it's the y-intercept. So I go to my y and I put a point at the 3. This point is x is 0, it went over 0, and we went up 3. So it's real important that you remember that the coordinate for y-intercept has a 0 here. And then this is in the m or the a position, and so the slope is negative 2. Remember, that's the rate of change or the rise or run. So we put that over 1, and we can, this is the rise, this is the run. So this is the y, and this is the x. If you remember from our earlier studies, when given 2 points, we take the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's, and that gives us our rate of change or our slope. So you see the y is on top. So this tells me negative 2. So that means I have to go down negative 2 on the y, and then this says 1. So that means 1 on the x. Now the x, these are the positive numbers, and these are the negative numbers. So if I go down negative 2, I have to go right 1, because that's a positive 1. Or I can do the opposite. I can also treat this as positive 2 over negative 1 because that keeps the whole thing negative. So if I have the slope of positive 2, I go up 2 because that's positive, and then negative 1, which is right here. And you can see that keeps you in the slope of the line. And then you just draw it through its points. Hopefully you do a little better job than I did right there. Here we go, make it a little steeper. And that's obviously a linear function or line. So tomorrow we're going to talk about standard form. If you have an equation set up in this form, it also makes a linear function. And there's a couple rules for this. If you have something like this, there's a number in the a position right before the x, and this has to be a positive whole number. Okay, so it can only be the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and into infinity. Now my b value, the coefficient in front of the y, can be an integer, which means it can be a positive or a negative. I'm trying to talk and write at the same time. Integer, sorry. And the c stands for your constant. And if you remember, we've talked about this before. Constant is just a number standing by itself. So it can be positive or it can be negative, but it needs to be just a regular old number. So an example of a standard form equation might be something like this. 2x minus 3y equals negative 1. Okay, so this is the coefficient before the x is the a. So my a value here is a 2, and it's a positive whole number, so that's good. The b is the coefficient in front of y. So my coefficient in front of 5 is negative 3. Make sure you're including the sign in front of it. This is positive because it has no sign that makes it positive. This is negative 3. And remember, b can be an integer, which is positive or negative whole number, so we're good there. And then c is just a constant, just a number by itself, so this works because there's no variable. So this is standard form equation. Therefore, if you had a question like this, and you saw this equation, we would say this is a linear function. It's in standard form. If you had something that looked like this, 2x squared plus 4y equals -2. This is not in standard form. It has 2 as its a, but it has to have an x, and this has x squared. X squared makes this not a linear function. Your b is 4, you have your y, and you have your constant of -2, but this is not in standard form. And if you remember from the beginning of class, something to the second power gives you a quadratic equation or a parabola. So tomorrow we're going to work on word problems because a lot of word problems are in standard form. So if we look at this, it says an electronics store sells DVDs for $15.99 and Blu-ray discs for $22.99. Oops. All right, so those are important pieces of information. The store hopes to earn $200 each week from these sales. Write an equation that represents the total amount the store would earn these weeks. So we want to look at this and come up with a variable that's going to represent DVDs. So we could just say that's D. And then we're going to look at this and say we need a variable for our other option, which is the Blu-ray discs, and we'll say B. So we have to sell so many DVDs at $15.99 and so many Blu-rays at $22.99 to get to 2,000 a week. So it doesn't really matter which order you do it, but when we write this equation, we want to first identify the variables. So we're going to say D stands for DVDs, and we're going to say B stands for Blu-ray. Then we're going to come up with an equation, and we know it's $15.99. $15.99 for every Blu-ray. So if we sold 2, it'd be $15.99 times 2. If we sold 3, and so on. Then we have to add that to our Blu-ray costs, and we said it's $22. Those are expensive. And 99 cents for a Blu-ray. So it's $22.99 times the number of Blu-rays we have, and we want that to equal a total of $2,000 for the week. And that's all you have to do on this section, okay? So you have to come up with your two variables, you have to come up with the equation, and then you're finished. And that's what we're going to do tomorrow. Tonight, your homework is going to be, let's see if I can find it for you, in your skills book. You're going to go to page, what is this? 325. And I actually want you to do the vocabulary. The vocabulary is very important in this section. You have to know what these different things mean. So I do want you to go ahead and do the vocabulary. And then you're going to do, using your calculators, what we did in class, where you're going to put in your line 1 and line 2 into your calculator. Hopefully you took good notes in class today. And get your linear equation. So if you remember, you have to go to Stat, Calc, and number 4. All of these are written in whole numbers. So my equation should be written in whole numbers as well. So we have f of x equals 73x plus 1963. Okay. And then the R value was how significant. So if you remember, the closer it is to the number 1 is how significant the game versus attendance is. And this is almost 1. So there's a very strong relationship between games and attendance. And then you're going to create your equation, and it asks you predict for game 9. So remember, this was in your x column, so 9 needs to go in for x. So it said game 1 is represented by x equals 1, so game 9 should be represented by x equals 9. So we rewrite the equation out, we plug in 9 for your x, and therefore when we have game 9, we should have 2,620 people in attendance. Okay, and then we write that sentence out. So I expect that this will be for the next several problems you're going to do. I want you to do problems 2 through 6. Okay, so you're going to do the vocabulary and problems 2 through 6 tonight. So for those visual people, your homework is what page was that? The vocabulary is on page 325, okay? So your homework is on page 320, oh, for goodness sakes. 325, you're gonna do the vocabulary, and then you're gonna do numbers 1, actually it's 2, because 1's done through 2 through 6, and I think that goes to, from page, that's gonna be page 326 to, what is it? I had this written out earlier. Each one's a page, so that should be easy. Actually, that seems like a lot. We'll go to 5, so we'll do 330. Okay, so we'll change that. We'll go 2 through 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 4 of them, yeah. 2, 5, 226 to 330, right? No, that's right. So 5 is page 330, right? And then 2 is page 327. I knew that was wrong. All right. Probably could have done that a little quicker, but anyway, this is your homework. So your homework tonight is a vocabulary on page 325. You did 2 through 4 on page 327 to 330. Okay? And I'll see you in the morning.